Have you ever stopped in complete stillness, just for a moment, and asked yourself, whose life am I really living? Not figuratively, not metaphorically, literally. Whose script am I reading from? Because here's a quiet horror many never notice. You could spend your whole life chasing dreams that were never yours, carving yourself into roles someone else applauds, and burying your true nature beneath layers of approval, fear, and conditioning. From childhood, we are handed an invisible costume. We're told who to be, how to behave, and what's acceptable to feel. And so, we perform. We play the role that earns the smile, avoids punishment, or keeps the peace. But behind that mask, a question lingers like a whisper. What if I'm not this person at all? Carl Jung didn't believe identity was something given. He believed it was something found, something uncovered, like an ancient artifact buried beneath decades of cultural dust. And until you begin that excavation, you haven't truly begun your life. From the very beginning, society offers us comfort at the price of authenticity. You're given labels: student, daughter, achiever, failure. Each one comes with expectations you didn't choose. You're praised when you conform, ignored when you deviate. It feels like freedom, but it's not. It's a well-lit cage. You chase careers, relationships, and milestones that look right, but feel empty. You wake up in a life that fits the mold, but not your soul. And the most tragic part, you learn to call that normal. Jung called this adaptation to the external world necessary, but dangerous. Because while we all wear social masks to function, most of us forget they're just masks. You begin believing the applause means you've made it. But applause doesn't mean alignment, it means performance. And the longer you perform, the further you drift from the inner voice that once whispered who you truly are. Jung coined the term persona, a word that once meant theater mask. It's the version of you that shows up to be accepted, to be liked, to blend in. But when the mask hardens, it begins to feel permanent. You confuse the mask with your identity. You become the nice guy, the overachiever, the one who always has it together. But who are you when no one's looking? Who are you without the job title, the partner, the expectations? That uncomfortable silence you sometimes feel? That's your real self knocking. You can suppress it, ignore it, drown it out with noise, entertainment, or productivity. But it doesn't vanish, it waits. Carl Jung warned that the longer we ignore what lies beneath the mask, the more distorted we become. Because what we fail to confront, we unconsciously project onto the world. The persona isn't evil, but it's not complete. And if you mistake it for the whole of who you are, you'll forever feel like a stranger in your own skin. We all have a side we hide, not just from others, but from ourselves. It's where the thoughts we're ashamed of live, the anger we're afraid to express, the vulnerability we were taught to repress, the dreams we secretly abandoned. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the unconscious vault of everything you've denied, rejected, or deemed unworthy. But here's the thing, the shadow doesn't stay buried, it leaks. It shows up in moments of irrational anger, in jealousy you can't explain, in the judgment you project onto others, or the patterns you keep repeating without knowing why. Think of it this way, you don't get to skip the parts of you that hurt. You either face them, or you live through them again and again, without realizing you're doing it. The parts of yourself you locked away didn't die. They became ghosts haunting your choices, your reactions, your relationships. But there's power in those ghosts, hidden potential, buried energy. And the more you face them, the more whole you become, because the shadow is not the enemy. It's the part of you begging to be seen. Imagine you're holding a mirror, but instead of your reflection, it shows every part of you you've refused to claim. Your envy, your insecurity, your need for control, your fear of being unloved. Unpleasant? Yes. But also liberating, because once you see them, they lose control over you. Jung believed real transformation begins the moment you stop blaming the outside world and begin asking, why does this trigger me? Why do I fear that person? Why do I repeat this dynamic? Most people never do this. They live in a state of distraction. Scroll, escape, work, repeat. Why? Because introspection feels like a threat to the ego. It fears what it might find. But that fear is guarding your power. What happens when you confront the mirror? You begin to understand yourself, not the curated version, not the good version, but the whole picture. That's when freedom begins, when you no longer need to hide your complexity, when you can sit in the dark without flinching. Because that's where the light is born. You are not a blank slate. You didn't arrive here empty. You are a vessel carrying ancient blueprints, universal forces that move through all of us. Jung called them archetypes. These are not characters in a novel. They are living patterns within the psyche. The hero, the mother, the trickster, the victim. They speak in symbols, in dreams, in instincts. They are the invisible scripts behind your actions. Think about it. Why are we drawn to the same stories, myths, and characters across every culture? Why do we all know the tale of the quest, the fall, the awakening? Because these are not just stories. They are psychic truths written into our being. The hero archetype pushes you to evolve, to leave safety, face hardship, and return wiser. The shadow challenges you to confront the unwanted. The wise old sage inside you urges introspection. The innocent seeks purity. The outlaw rebels against oppression. And they don't operate alone. They clash, collide, and rotate through you daily. The goal isn't to silence any one voice. It's to listen to them all, understand them, and allow them to integrate. Because your life is not just happening at the surface. It's the outcome of deep, unconscious forces you've barely begun to meet. The moment you recognize that is the moment you stop being a puppet of old programs and start becoming the author of your mind. You are not one thing, not a single energy, not a simple identity. Inside you exists polarity, masculine and feminine, structure and chaos, reason and intuition. Carl Jung named these inner forces anima and animus. In every man lives a quiet feminine current. The anima, your capacity to feel, to imagine, to nurture, to connect with the unseen. And in every woman resides the animus, your fire, your focus, your drive to act, to analyze, to define. These energies have nothing to do with gender roles. They are psychological principles. And when they are in harmony, a person feels whole. But we live in a world that teaches men to fear softness and women to fear power. So men reject their anima, calling it weakness. They numb emotion, suppress sensitivity, and chase external power, while feeling a void they can't explain. And women reject the animus, fearing it will make them unlovable. They silence their voice, hesitate to lead, and mistake self-sacrifice for virtue. But when you suppress these forces, you become lopsided, disconnected from a vital part of your own nature. True strength comes not from exaggerating one side, but from balancing both. When anima and animus dance in unison, you don't just survive life, you create it. Let's pause, forget psychology, forget roles, forget symbols. Let's ask the question beneath all questions. Who are you? Really, not your name, not your history, not your personality, but the observer, the awareness, the thing that notices all of it. Jung, and mystics long before him, pointed to a truth most terrifying and freeing. The self you believe you are is a story, an echo of past events, shaped by memory, trauma, habit, and environment. It is real, but not the whole. The I you cling to is a construct. Useful, yes, but not sacred, not permanent. So many of us suffer not because we are broken, but because we refuse to let go of who we think we are. You say, I'm just not confident. I always mess things up. I'm this kind of person. But who told you that? And when did you decide to agree? The ego wants certainty. It builds a cage made of identity. But consciousness is water. It flows, it shifts, it evolves. And the moment you stop gripping the false I is the moment the true self, fluid, vast, and limitless, begins to emerge. So here we are. You've explored the persona you wear, faced the shadow you feared, listened to the archetypes within you, and challenged the story of who you are. Now what? Now you remember that you were never broken. You were never lost. You were only hiding from yourself. The journey Jung speaks of, individuation, is not about fixing. It's about returning, reclaiming every scattered part, facing every truth you denied, and saying to yourself, I am not just light, I am shadow too. I am contradiction. I am whole. This path is not linear. There's no finish line, no final badge of enlightenment. But there is peace, because once you stop running, Once you embrace the totality of who you are, you stop searching. You begin living. So the real question is this: are you willing to become the version of yourself you've spent your whole life avoiding? The one that is terrifying, because it is free. The one that doesn't need approval or perfection or control, because that version, the one that lives beneath the layers, beyond the mask, behind the name, has been waiting for you. And the moment you answer is the moment your life truly begins.